Welcome to Sexuality and Truth with Phil Lees, the podcast where we uncover the realities of youth, sex, and the impact of cultural norms. Today, we continue our series, Podcasts Supporting Families in Navigating Today's Public Education. This is Episode 2, Engage the Facts, Know What's Being Taught. Parents, it's not enough to just have concerns about education. To respond wisely, we need to know the facts. And here to guide us through those facts is your host, Phil Lees.
Thank you so much. Hi friends, it's great to be with you again. In our first episode, we recognized that we are living in a time of concern, but also a time of opportunity. Now we begin the journey of the Peace Engage process, and the very first step is this: engage the facts. Why start here? Because when we don't know the facts, we either overreact out of fear or underreact out of ignorance. Neither of those responses helps our kids. But when we are clear about what's actually being taught, we can respond with wisdom and confidence. So let's talk facts. There are two, often opposing philosophical approaches to sexual health instruction: comprehensive sex education and sexual risk avoidance. Both approaches cover the typical sexual health content, puberty, conception, reproduction, and sexually transmitted diseases, but differ when it comes to instruction on teen sexual activity. What's being taught in schools? The approach driving sexual health instruction in society and schools is comprehensive sex education, often referred to as CSE. Let's first look at CSE in some detail. Comprehensive sex education, CSE. It's supported by groups like Planned Parenthood, the World Health Organization, and here in Canada, SEICCAN, the Sexual Information and Education Council of Canada. CSE is based on sexual rights and the idea that children are sexual from birth. The message is, explore sexuality at any age, as long as it's consensual. In the program, kids are taught about sexual orientation, gender identity and fluidity, sexual practices, and even experimentation in elementary school years. To get more details about the curriculum, please see the Parent Support Guide, Guiding Through the Sex Ed Confusion. This should concern us. If we step back and look at the facts, we see the negative results. Early sexual activity has enormous costs for adolescents, their families, communities, and for society as a whole. Teen sexual activity is associated with negative lifelong outcomes. Whether or not a pregnancy or sexually transmitted infection occurs, sexual initiation has been associated with reduced academic achievement, reduced earning potential, and increased exposure to poverty, feeling of regret for sexual activity, poorer mental and emotional health, increased depression, increased suicide rates, poorer family relationships, reduced family stability, and increased of divorce, increased drug and alcohol, and higher likelihood of sexual exploitation, dating violence, and rape. Comprehensive sex education, CSE, was originally adopted in the mid-1990s because it promised to reduce HIV and sexually transmitted infection rates. But CSE is not reducing sexually transmitted infections. The reality is that since the inception of CSE in schools, sexually transmitted infection rates have increased significantly during the years of CSE instruction, up to 4,200%. In addition, peer-reviewed studies prove it is not working and often leads to other negative results. For example, the Institute for Research and Evaluation examined 103 CSE proof-of-concept studies reference as evidence that CSE works. The research proved there is no evidence that the programs reduce teen pregnancy or sexually transmitted infections. No evidence of increased condom use by sexually active teens. There were more negative results than positive. When the evidence began to show the CSE programs were not resulting in improved health, the supporting CSE organization supporting did not criticize the research. They simply changed the purpose of CSE from improving health to sex education is a vehicle for social change. In essence, the Sexual Information and Education Council of Canada is admitting that comprehensive sex education does not result in improved health, which is supposed to be the purpose of health education. As a result of the research demonstrating the negative effects of the comprehensive sex education approach, much work has been done on an abstinence-based approach that is now being called sexual risk avoidance. Instead of assuming kids are sexual from birth, it recognizes that most are not sexually active. In fact, surveys confirm that by grade 11, 76% of students have not had intercourse. That's a fact we rarely hear. SRA equips and empowers youth to protect their future by avoiding non-marital sexual activity. It is important to note that this applies no matter the gender identity or sexual orientation of the individual. SRA encourages youth to wait until a lifelong, loving marriage. Why is this important? Because research shows they'll have stronger mental health, healthier relationships, higher academic achievement, and greater financial stability. What are the topics of an SRA program? In addition to the typical sex ed content, reproduction, puberty, sexually transmitted infections, the program helps students to understand the negative impact youth sex has on physical, mental, and relational health, completing education, achieving goals, and even earning potential. SRA helps students to develop skills to resist negative peer pressure by setting protective boundaries and developing refusal skills. It helps them to understand the value of mutual monogamy. This is all accomplished in an atmosphere where students also learn to respect that others may make different choices. Does sexual risk avoidance work? Evidence from rigorous evaluations, including randomized controlled trials and long-term studies, proves that well-designed SRA programs can significantly influence teen behavior. For more information about the facts surrounding CSE and SRA program, please the Engage the Facts chapter of the PEACE Parent Support Guide called Guiding Through the Sex Ed Confusion. This can be downloaded from the link below the podcast or from the PEACE Ontario website. So what can you do? Here are 3 practical ways to engage the facts. 1. Download the Peace Parent Support Guide called Guiding Through the Sex Ed Confusion and read the chapter titled Engage the Facts. This will provide more details and researched information. 2. Read the curriculum notices from school. Every school board is required to make sensitive curriculum content available to parents. Don't ignore those letters, read them, ask questions, and if necessary, request clarification. 3. Know your options. In Canada and many US states, parents have the right to opt out of certain classes or request faith accommodations. Some families choose private or homeschooling. Many don't have that option. But even within public schools, you can engage policies that protect religious freedom and parental choice. Why does STEP matters? Engaging the facts is about more than school policy. It's about equipping ourselves as parents so we can speak truth to our kids. Because here's another fact. Parents remain the most influential voice in a child's life. Not media, not peers, not government policies. You. So let's not bury our heads in the sand. Let's know the facts, use them wisely, and step forward with clarity and courage. That's the first step in the Peace Engage process. And I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast channel. That way, you'll get notified when each new episode comes out. We've got 4 more conversations ahead, and you don't want to miss them. Next time, we'll talk about step 2, the peaceful process. Be a blessing, not a barrier. This is where we'll see how relationships, not arguments, become the bridge for truth.
That's it for today's episode of Sexuality and Truth with Phil Lees. We hope this conversation helped you see how knowing the facts empowers you to respond with wisdom, not fear, in today's education system. Explore more episodes at peaceontario.com/podcast, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a release. Join us next time for episode 3, The Peaceful Process. Blessings, not a barrier. Until then, remember, as families, churches, and communities, we are called not just to resist culture, but to shape it with truth, with love, and with courage.